No, I think maybe the idea of I don't know, I haven't read anything about it, but I don't know if the kind of idea of privacy is more of like a part of like Western culture where doors are closed a lot because of the climate, whereas in India like all the doors are open and you all live together even after marriage and you carry on that's the way you live, whereas here like now like we go off to uni and then like we don't necessarily like come home, and you know that whole kind of idea of changing your clothes. We still have it now in our house. I don't know what maybe our house is a bit weird, but like you go in the bathroom, like have a bath. This is like my parents' home, and I don't know what it was like in India as well. So but you don't get dried in the bathroom. You get dried in the living room. Don't know if that's in the...
Really?
Yeah. We get dried in the living room and like sit in front of the fire to like dry off.
Extra?
And then like...
As in like at all ages?
Yeah, we all do it. We still do it. Well, I don't do it. Obviously, I don't do it now. And we don't have a dad anymore in our house as well. But I think I probably did that to the age of 10. That was fine. And occasionally, like you coming from the bathroom, there's like a whole group of unannounced relatives all sat there. You're like, ow, go back out again. But maybe that was our family. But I don't know.
Maybe that's because there was a fire. Yeah. Because
maybe because it's
really
cold.
I can't imagine. But also,
I don't know if this is like from like living like in the West, but like. A lot of things like centred around the TV as well and the timings of programmes. So like EastEnders, for example, was a bit of a feature in our household. So like if you're in the middle of like cooking, there's things that don't need to be done in the kitchen. So like all the chopping or peeling of garlic or scraping the ginger, just like lay a cloth out on the middle of the living room floor and sit down and do it there while you're watching TV.
So obviously you can't pause it back then as well, like it was at a certain time. If you
could video it. But it's kind of like things kind of spread a bit more. And I think so, yeah, but I mean, I don't know how much of that is Indian and how much of that is like Western culture, or what if that comes from Kenya. But I think that whole, in India certainly, that whole kind of let's all peel a whole shed load of string beans and it's going to take us like 3 hours to do that, or go through like the lentils and pick out all the stones. It's like, God,
but I think that's because it was like back then for our grandmas and stuff, that was their life. Like we kind of think like, okay, this is a chore that needs to be done, and like it's kind of taking me away from the time that I'd rather spend doing other things. I guess for them as well, it was like this is our time. This is like a big part of our day.
Yeah, and it was kind of like a social thing as well, and almost like ritualistic. I mean, like one of the early memories I've got from going to India on holiday was when they make shas, which is like that yogurty drink, and I've seen pictures on Diwali cards of like Krishna and some gopis like pulling shas, and basically it's a great big pot and the stick and like rope, and then people are pulling it from side to side to like stir up the milky yogurt in the middle. And I remember that taking place in the living room in our house in India, and everyone like, it's a laugh, like let's play tug of war with this kind of great big massive pot.
Talking about that,
I think probably well. Could you also talk a little bit about because you mentioned like what they did for work as well in Kenya.
Yeah, or here as well. What was that? What we were talking about? Okay,
yeah,
so I think in Kenya, my granddad worked on the docks, and I'm not exactly sure what his job was, but I imagine that was like manual work on like ships and that in the port at Mombasa. And I think my grandma might have been a teacher for some time. I think she was actually a school teacher for some time, and then that housewife for the rest of it. But when they came here, so like my mum came over and my uncle came over two uncles came over like 2 or 3 years prior to my grandparents coming over. They actually came in 1974, around that time. You know, I was saying to Alia earlier that one of the rooms, which would be the front room, was like used for work, and the kind of work that they did was like work that a factory outsources. So like they kind of outsource like random, they outsource like parts of a bigger job for someone to do. So it could be like just fitting two plastic things like together and then putting them in a box. And we all, because it's such an easy thing to do, we all like had to do it, even as kids. Like, okay, we've got like in our front room, we've got like this load of boxes over here full of like plastic cogs need to be fitted into this box of like other plastic pieces, and then they need to be, so we had like this like factory line going on in the front room. And the one I remember, which I found interesting for like kind of like an hour, and then tried to bugger off somewhere else to avoid it, was folding all these like A4 paper folders. So, and then you get the side of like a paper folder which kind of lets you put more paper in. You would like glue that to the two sides. It's like the kind of folders we would have used in uni or whatever.
Yeah.
And just like folding millions of those. But that was at my grandparents' house as the kind of work they had earlier on. I think my granddad went to work in a engineering factory, and my uncles went off to uni. But my mum, after my sister was born, worked at home, and in the front room she'd have this like industrial lock stitch machine. So she'd have like random guy turns up from a factory with like sacks full of like bits of fabric which she has to like join together. And in fact, one of them I remember quite clearly was just circles. I don't know what they were used for, maybe they're like patches on jeans or something, but she'd like overlock a load of fabric circles. So we had like loads of like bits of fabric at our house, which I turned into like dolls' dresses and stuff.
Were they ever used for like patches and I don't know? Like,
I have no idea what on earth they were for, but
were they ever like repurposed like by your family? Like you made dolls?
Not really. No, not that I remember. But I mean, what part of the house was used for work or industry. And the amount of noise that comes from those industrial machines is just an absolute nightmare. And there's no way that I would live with that today. And back then, I don't know about, the whole thing of like your neighbours complaining with, can you imagine the amount of noise, like so loud that you can hear it on the street, and people would like, I don't know if your neighbours would knock on your door, but I think back then people were a bit flexible with things like that, because that's how people had their livelihood.
That's that whole private person, like private public thing again, I think that's coming back, that shows that it was kind of cultural but also across generations as well. Like back then, maybe because of the way work was and the way people knew each other had to make ends meet, it was kind of like they're just hustling the way that we're hustling, like they're kind of just getting by the way that we're trying to get by.
And I think in Leicester, I think it's gone back that way as well, because there's like a whole wave of like recent migrants from from Daman and Diu, which were like owned by the Portuguese. And I think when Portugal joined the EU, that allowed people from those areas to kind of like come to Europe, and lots of people from those communities are in Leicester, but they're working way below minimal wage, and it's completely illegal. But people are working for £2 an hour, and although they get a wage slip, they're forced to pay back what they've got on the wage slip back to the employer, otherwise they'd get sacked. And I'm saying that's just completely out of order. But people, because they don't have limited English and they're struggling to get jobs, they're taking these jobs in these like factories doing this kind of stuff, and that's now.
And sometimes, and then sometimes they don't even have like the necessary papers and stuff, which means that employers can get away with not
Exactly.
like the government limit of like minimum wage because they're kind of working under the radar anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the newer wave of Indian migrants is just like having a different hustle compared to us. Like when our families came here, they were the first ones, whereas now the new wave is coming or has come. It would just be interesting to hear like how they relate to us as like the English Indians or like the English Asians, and how, and if they feel welcomed by us, or if they see us as like different or as Indian. Or
I think they do see us as different. I mean, certainly the other way round. I see them as complete. You know, for me, I don't have much in common with people who are newly from India, and even this is me personally, but even I'm just talking from my personal kind of viewpoint. But even people that I meet in London who are like working in, you know, in the city, working in like banks and so on, and they're recently from India, and they probably come from quite middle class families in India, you know, to be kind of working quite high up in the IT or in the banking kind of in business. I have very little in common with them, and even like going to India, like I've been to India like so many times, but even now, like every time I go, I feel slightly removed from India. I don't know what the rest of you feel, but I mean when I used to go kind of as in my 20s, when I was like younger, I think, I don't know, I kind of used to really think that, oh yeah, I'm Indian, and this is part of my heritage. But now I just feel more and more removed from that, and I don't know why that is.
How do you feel when you know people might ascribe like an ethnic nationality to you, and is that awkward because you don't feel like you have much in common with India?
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, like it depends like what the situation is and when those kind of instances happen. But I kind of certainly find it happening more so with people who are not from this country. So like people, and also like if I happen to like be in like a rural community. In the rural area rather than in the city, it happens more and more there. Where and not recently, but like maybe about like 5 years ago, like you know, somebody from Europe comes up to me and starts talking to me in Hindi. And so, okay, so I'll put it into context a bit more better because otherwise it won't make sense. I do this kind of meditation, so I go to a meditation centre where it's completely international. It's on the Welsh border. It's completely international.
Is it the Stand-Up Girl one?
No, not that far out.
Oh, okay.
It's Vipassana in Herefordshire.
Oh, okay.
So I go there regularly, and it hasn't happened recently, but a lot of people that go there, like the European or the white British people, have travelled a lot in India, and they're slightly alternative, and they're really into Indian culture, like in a big way.
So
And
annoying.
yeah, so they might come up to you and start talking to you in Hindi, like, and you're like, yeah. I have no idea what you're talking about, and they go, oh, but you're Indian, and like, yeah, but I don't speak Hindi, and like I try not to get like kind of wound up about it now. I just like try not, but and it's that assumption that they make the assumption that just because you have a different skin tone to them, that you're from India and you eat spicy food. And you know everything about XYZ about like religions over there, and you're there kind of. So as
like a little bit fetishizing, I think.
Yeah, totally. And then because they notice that I'm kind of looking slightly like irritated by them, by what they've just done. They say, oh, but it's only because I want to learn Hindi, and I thought I could learn Hindi of you. And it's like, I'm sorry, but like, no, go to some Hindi classes. I just feel irritated, just to put it in a nutshell. And I think actually these days, I think because it's all part of like the meditation, like you're there, and the idea is not to feel irritated and to kind of be, everyone, feel compassionate to everyone. Everyone's coming from a different place. So I just like really minimise the conversation, and actually I can see it coming, like someone's kind of
see it a mile away,
and they're making a beeline for you. So I just like kind of will like move away before it happens.
I find it. I brought this up with my colleagues from Patchwork yesterday, and I said like I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm Indian outright. Like that wouldn't be the first thing that comes to my mind. Obviously, I think also I have different and multiple political, emotional, personal personas that I bring out with different people. Like in this conversation, obviously I'm very aware of like my multiple histories with someone else, when I knew that like my being Indian was important for me to bring up. I would say that I'm Indian. If in other places I'd say that I'm British first. So yeah, I think this is something that we all are going to have to like continue to like battle with a little bit, and like have a little bit of a back and forth with. Not battle, it's great. But I personally would say that I am British first, because all of my cultural references, the things that make me feel like the things that I call upon every day to exist in terms of like my being able to navigate myself around a locality, my ability to speak fluently and express how I feel, that comes through English. Like my being from London is part of that Britishness. So that I feel like I'm most out of all three of those locations, the place that I'm most rooted is Britain, but I'm so aware of my Indian heritage is playing a massive part in I'm also rooted there, even though it feels more distant. There are still roots that exist there, and I don't forget that.
Have you visited India?
Yeah, I have a few times. The first time we went, it was very much like meet all the family that you haven't met before. Second time was a wedding. Third time was actually just with friends, which is in the south, which was great. And the fourth time was to take my dad's ashes to India. So all very different experiences. And I immediately, from the first time I went to India, I was like, wow, shock, like, this is different. Like,
what were you expecting before you...
I didn't really have that many expectations. I didn't have that many expectations. I knew, even though I was quite young, I must have been like 12, but I knew it wasn't this whole like passage to India, like mythical, beautiful, like Jungle Book, like the whole
Little Princess.
Exactly, like this whole idea, this whole tradition of this whole tradition of white people being obsessed with India, and it being seen as like a mythical, magical, beautiful place where you're bound to feel enlightened. I knew it wasn't going to be like that. I knew that it wouldn't. And going there, among the smells and like the having to drink lots of water, not being able to eat at the dhabas, and the toilets, and them being so different, and like me being really like shocked about that. Among that whole thing, I also found like the way that men were a bit horrible. Like, as in obviously I wouldn't go around in vest tops, but like my brother's 3 years younger than me, and even at that time he was like in single digit age, but he felt really protective over me then. Like he'd be like, Ben, why are these people looking at you? And it's not like I'm like wearing lots of makeup or anything like that, but then there was just a sense that they were just a little bit more like open / a little bit more leery in a way that I just wasn't used to over here. So that made me bit uncomfortable. So I immediately felt like I was an outsider, that I was someone who stuck out like a sore thumb. An imposter. And it was funny that the first place that we went was Mumbai, and I was like, oh my god, I can speak Gujarati, I've gone to Gujarati classes, I'm going to be set here. So like, to a random person in the street, I was like talking to them in Gujarati, and they're like, what are you on about? I was like, but you're Indian, I'm Indian. And then I realised that obviously, like, this is the wrong language for this place. So yeah, I think that I would first and foremost say that I'm British. As someone who is operating now, as someone who's older, operating within the arts, within cultural sectors and stuff, I would also say that I'm brown in a way that similarly speaks, like in a similar way that blackness operates. So in the way that black is a political statement, I would say that brown is also a similar political statement in a way that we can see as like being unified, as we're not necessarily Indian, Hindu, Sikh. I mean Indian, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh. We're not Indian, Pakistani, Kashmiri, Bengali, whatever, or Gujarati, Marathi, any of those sorts of things. Like when we are as post-colonial subjects in the heart of the empire in Britain, I would say that saying that I'm brown is political and an important part of my identity and how I relate to my practice, because it speaks to my Britishness as well as my Indianness, and East Africanness as well is something that I am trying to excavate in my identity a little bit, because it isn't something that is spoken about to me. So yeah, I think that's a really long-winded answer, but I would say that I am located in Britain. I do feel distant to India politically. Culturally, like I'm very not indebted, but grateful to what I have received from India. When I see all of these yoga things, I am, and the way that it is so whitewashed, and they will so easily say namaste and om, and completely ignore brown presence, like in yoga. I'm proud that that is part of my history and my culture, and something that I can claim. Spiritually, I'm very rooted in India, and what my ancestors have given me in terms of the like Vedantic knowledge, which occurs to me like more regularly now, and I am trying to bring up in my own like contemporary practice. So yeah, that's a really long answer, but I think I have roots in all four of those locations. That I'm trying to figure out to what extent.